Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of our podcast. This newsletter is political. I am here with my dad on this wonderful Saturday afternoon. He's in a mood because Texas, was it Texas? Yeah, Texas just lost against Alabama. So if he sounds less energetic, that's because he's sad. But even with the sadness, he still pulled himself together enough to do this podcast with us. And he actually did you choose the topic this week?
Oh, you did.
Oh, I chose the topic. Well, I chose the topic this week. So he's being a good sport and showing up and going to go ahead and tell us what the topic is for this week.
Homelessness. You chose homelessness. I'm not quite sure you did, but we did talk about a couple of things, and this one came up 2 or 3 times, and so we ended up landing on this topic. I say North Texas, Dallas, Tarrant County, Fort Worth, Parker County, Denton County, Collin County, Rockwall, Kaufman. There's some counties north of here, north of Collin and Denton. That encompasses North Texas, I guess. But what is homelessness in North Texas and Dallas and Fort Worth?
Okay, so homelessness in Dallas, Texas, Fort Worth. So this is according to United Way. Their 2022 point-in-time homeless count found that on any given night, there are 4,410 individuals experiencing homelessness in Dallas and Collin counties. And that's actually the lowest count number since 2019. And of course, you see really homelessness impacting individuals are the most dangerous time, I believe, for the homeless population is during extreme weather. And that's usually when we hear on the news, or we probably don't even hear it on the news, but we would get, when I worked in a Dallas newsroom, or some of the alerts that I get will be like bodies found due to extreme weather, body picked up, et cetera, et cetera. And just FYI, from when we first started this podcast to this moment, we had like an hour in between break because we have new microphones, and I was trying to figure out the microphones. So if it sounds different from when we first started to just right now, trust me, I had just spent an hour trying to figure out why it sounds that way. But at least for the rest of this podcast, just make do with the sound. Anyways, so it seems like homelessness is decreasing in Dallas County. What are you thinking about that?
I saw that. I mean, I pretty much got the same article pulled up. However, and I'm trying to go back and find it. As we've said in the past, Vicki and I go through a whole bunch of articles and try to piece this together and use references. She was talking from United Way. There's another one. It did, like in 21, it was like over 4,500 between Dallas and Collin County, and now they're saying there's 4,400 this 22. But the concern was, and I'm trying to go back and find this, is the chronic homelessness. That was on the increase, which means that there's different types of homelessness. And so the transitional homelessness seems to have abated a little bit, but the chronic homelessness is increasing, which, what's the cause of that is the first question, and then how do we address it? How do we, see what we can do to solve this problem? I think if you're in any city in the United States of America, unless you're in a real small city, you see signs of homelessness. In Dallas, when we pulled up the 4,000 people plus in Dallas County that are homeless, that number seems real low.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Because I guess it's just because whether the homeless people in camp are in very, very visible environments. A lot of times it's under bridges, and you'll see, the Better Half and I were driving last night, and we came around a corner, and there was a slew of tents under this one bridge. And I've seen that happen before. And then what's sad is the city of Dallas will come along and kick everybody out and start confiscating what little possessions these people have. So the homelessness, people talk about, it's bad and we got to do something about it. That's the easy thing to say. What's the real thing to say is, what do we do about it? It's not an easy answer. You could throw a lot of money at it, but the people who are homeless, there's different people who make up homeless. Obviously, everybody talks about the mentally ill, and the mentally ill, there's people that are mentally ill that are homeless, and we see them wandering the streets here and there, and we all take a big 2 or 3 steps around the side and kind of keep our distance. Or there's the people who are, and this is the most dangerous thing, especially with rents coming up, that are kind of that, not just poverty level, but borderline poverty level, but borderline super poverty level, where they're just barely making any kind of thing, and they can't get anywhere near enough to pay for rent, and even a very run-down place. I mean, it's horrible to say that, run-down place, but rents are so high that even the inexpensive places are expensive to someone who's got maybe, let's just say, no consistent income. They may pick up a day job here and there. I mean, they're trying to do something for themselves, and they don't have a chance to get regular income. Finding a place to live, finding a place that you can afford, is just impossible for them nowadays. So again, when the numbers came out that we talked about it dipped slightly from last year to this year, it was kind of a shock. But I'm wondering, again, back to the point of transitional homeless, when these rents keep going up, is that going to have an effect on, more and more people falling into a transitional homelessness state? So it's something that needs to be addressed. I mean, it's, we walk by and we think, oh, that's sad, or we think, oh, it's ugly the way they're living there, or other things, depending on what kind of viewpoint you have in life. But there's also health hazards in these homeless camps. They do not get health care. Disease can run rampant through them. Of course, if anybody passes away, how long does it take for someone finds out someone passed away that's homeless? And there's serious health concerns there that surprisingly the average person doesn't pick up on and think we need to address. So you can dive into this in so many ways. The homeless is such a universal problem, but there's no real universal answer to it. And what people do is real hit and miss, and a lot of it is left up to nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And which in some ways, like United Way, they're a very established organization, and they've got plans for this. And then there's homeless shelters that are established. But then there's also some smaller nonprofits who probably have great intentions, but you have to be a little worried about how they're managing this and how they're able to vet some of their solutions. I found a really interesting one called Elevate, and it's for homeless people, youth, young people who are homeless, and they have something called a host home. Well, this is a very small.
This is gonna bother me.
Yeah, this is a small nonprofit, doesn't raise a lot of money. How do they vet these host homes for these young people? Again, young people are already vulnerable. A homeless young person is very vulnerable, and we're going to throw them into a home that.
Wait, is this public or private?
It's a nonprofit. It's private.
Oh, so it's a nonprofit. See, that's the other thing too, because it's like the regulatory thing,
Yeah,
standards for a nonprofit. Do they even exist?
I don't know. Again,
I don't think they do.
I don't know much about this program. I went to their website because we were looking at homelessness broadly, and I picked up on youth homelessness, and there's reasons for it. Of course, some of it's runaway. Some of it's family fights.
Yeah.
Some of it, they don't have a family.
Yeah.
Something's happened, and their parents have either gone to jail for drug use, and that's usually where the homeless for family fall apart, is there's some kind of abuse, alcohol, or domestic violence, drug abuse, things of this nature that can put a kid on the streets pretty fast, and they really have it's hard for them to find the options that they have. Most of the homelessness shelters are for adults. There are very, very little, as best I can find, resources for young people, so they end up on the street fast. They're, of course, susceptible to people saying they're going to help them, and of course then abusing them and taking advantage of them, and some pretty horrid things that could go on. But when I saw this, I'm like, okay, this looks nice. And then you start looking at it, and how does this evaluated by other organizations? I'm not saying anything against them. Obviously, they're very aware of a problem. They're trying to find solutions.
But it is a red flag.
It is a red flag in my eyes. You know, you would hope somebody like
And this is
United Way, which is well established and has the resources and has people know who the United Way are. So if they were to come out and say, we want to look at host homes, they might be able to do a little bit better job at being able to managing and finding the right type of family to do this. Because boy, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but you talk about foster care. You read the horror stories going
we
on
did
in foster
talk about
care.
it. We had
A little
podcast
bit of it,
episode.
yeah. But I mean, we didn't get into the depths of the problems of
Yeah,
foster care
that's
with,
true.
you know, what happens to these children, how many good homes are there. Every now and then you'll see a headline story. And so we have to look at this pretty broadly, universally, but we also have to, you know, figure out how do we vet the solutions.
And so kind of going more into that like public-private partnership, or excuse me, on that private endeavor, there has been a public-private partnership with Dallas to try to find solutions to homelessness. Now this is according to Axios Dallas, which basically lays out that a Dallas public-private coalition wants to house 2,700 homeless people. So that was back in October. That was their goal laid out, set forth starting in October of 2021. And then they set their timeline to do this, to house 2,700 people into housing by October 2023. So that's a 2-year timeline that they gave themselves to but to go through this private-public partnership. Some of the private donors include Bank of America, Communities Foundation of Texas, and the Perot family. And the way that they're doing this is that they're giving more than 600 housing vouchers towards domestic violence survivors, families, and individuals with significant health issues. And this is interesting because you noted that the issue in Dallas is chronic homelessness. And they did a study showing that 37% of the Dallas homeless population falls under that category of chronic homelessness, which goes so I don't think giving people housing vouchers is the solution to whatever homeless problem that is here in Texas or in Dallas.
That's a good point. You could go either way with that. I think a homeless voucher, if they're on the edge, if there's someone that's you know their income is below the poverty level, they're having a hard time finding affordable housing, giving someone a housing voucher where they can at least stabilize themselves,
Yeah, that's true.
find a little bit better employment, a little bit higher income, and push them up closer, at least to the top of the poverty level, or even just a little bit above it, so they can afford a normal, a regular housing thing. Then that would be a benefit. But for chronic homelessness, because there's some people, and we all like to judge people. We're all human. We're all our little human selves, and we like to judge people. And people will judge the homeless. They're lazy, or they're mentally ill, and they're all unfit to be doing this or doing that. And of course, that's the most unfair assessment of things when it comes to the homeless. But there are people who really have been homeless for so long, they're going to stay homeless because they are afraid. I'm guessing there. Maybe for whatever reason it is, they are not wanting to get back into what we call normal society. They creatures of habit. This is the way they've learned to live. This is the way they feel comfortable, and they may or may not want to get into an apartment and have some type of 40-hour-a-week job that pays the bills and all the stuff that we consider normal living. And there are a few people who are like that. There are mentally ill people who they just cannot. And then what do we do?
They just can't. They just cannot.
They cannot, manage a life. And they've either have become either so separated from their family, the family has no idea where they are, the family doesn't care anymore, or the family doesn't know what to do with them, because a lot of times these mental illnesses, there's some violent outbursts by these family members, and they're having a hard time managing them. And it gets to be the point where it's hard for these families to deal with this, and these people run off, and the families lose track, and these people are out there on their own, and they live in, you know, in these homeless camps, and even some of the homeless probably have a hard time dealing with them because it's a struggle with mentally ill. And do we have the resources to put mentally ill people in the hospitals on a regular basis until we can get enough medication in them to level them off? And then boom, this happens. They quit taking the medicine, and there they go again. So there's one group of homelessness that, you know, is more than just having a home. I mean, the definition of a homeless person is they're without a home. It's
Right.
pretty straightforward. Whether it be an apartment, a home, just a regular place to lay their head, to put it in the most simplest of simple things. And so we're practicing our Halloween things with the squeaking doors in the back.
Yeah. Trust me, it frustrates me just as much as it frustrates the listener. But we will fix this problem by the time of the next episode. It's just that Saturday we got things to do, and we had to go ahead and record this before we both lived our lives.
Went off about our daily stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, so when you talk about homelessness.
Yeah, that's
you're-
what this podcast is
Yeah,
about.
I know, but
this episode.
you're left with just a myriad of problems to address. It's not just, you can just put your finger, like I said, you can't put it on the mentally ill. You can't put it on people who call people lazy. You can't put it on the poverty level just by itself. There are people who want a life, that do not want to be homeless, but they have very few avenues to, as we like to say in America, pull themselves up by their bootstraps and fix things.
Mm-hmm.
It's an effort, and it's an effort that a lot of times there are roadblocks in the way to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, to go on the point that at the beginning of that part of your point, you were talking about how like there's like this judgment among people, and so some of that judgment, I don't want to say, I mean, it's just human nature. You see someone that gives you a weird vibe, and they look desperate, and they look like there's someone that could use your goods and resources. That's just human nature to snap on that judgment because it's a safety aspect. There's been situations where I've been taking public transportation. Now I have a car now for 2 years, but I didn't get a car until I was 22, 23. And I had to take public transportation in San Diego. I had to take public transportation in Dallas. And it's like, yeah, I make him come off as somewhat of a, like a female dog, because sometimes people will be approaching me and I don't know what their intentions are, especially on these public transportation places where someone will come up to you, and because they have nothing to lose, they will be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more demanding, and asking for money or trying to, I don't know, hit me up and all that other stuff. But this is an interesting article from the Dallas Morning News that actually was in July of this year. It's titled, "Dallas Offers Panhandlers Help, but only a handful say the city has what they need." And then this is a quote from that article, but basically it says, according to the city, 20% of panhandlers in Dallas today are homeless. Of 80 field reports filed after city officials responded to calls about panhandling since the rollout of, there's a city program, only 5 people have successfully received help. We're seeing more people who aren't interested in help. Now, for those who are, we're going to talk to you, said Christine Crossley, director of the Office of Homeless Solutions, who added that reports from residents indicate there has been a reduction in panhandling since the program's launched. So the program that they're talking about is basically just like a Dallas program to discourage begging on street medians by offering panhandlers a way into the city's rehousing program if they're homeless. So that's interesting because it says that 20% of panhandlers in Dallas today are homeless. So maybe that's why it seems as if the homeless population is more
Larger.
than what it is, because panhandlers, we're assuming that they're homeless.
That makes a good point. 'Cause
Yeah.
there's panhandlers in any
Everywhere.
large city. There's panhandlers on almost every city block. I'm going to take a little bit of a turn from that just to mention this. It's illegal to feed more than 5 homeless people at once on public property, which, and to the point, it's to their safety, I guess, because good-hearted people. I mean, we're talking how we're all judgmental and stuff like that. Well, let's talk about good-hearted people. There are a lot of times when people want to feed the homeless, and they'll do things on their own. But in the state of Texas, this is the state of Texas, if you're to cook up a pot of soup and take it to a bunch of homeless people, it's illegal for two reasons. One, you're doing more than 5 people, if you go to a camp on public property, and you cannot serve home-cooked food to the homeless. Now, that sounds kind of mean, but I think, again, because, you go to restaurants and there's health codes and things like that, I think they're trying just to protect the homeless from people who have good intentions but don't understand that feeding large quantities of people, there are certain, requirements to keep food safe and not, go bad and things of that nature. A little bit of government overreach maybe, but I see that, but I just think, we're talking about the panhandlers and all that, but you'll see sometimes, and I do this, we do this occasionally, we'll give, they're always out on the street, we'll give them a bottle of water, or we'll give them something that we have. For food, you just have to be careful. You can give panhandlers food, you can give homeless food, but it has to be in enclosed containers. It can't, not like Tupperware container, but packaged food, canned goods, bottled water, things of this nature. But you unfortunately cannot cook a meal and take it to a group of homeless people under a bridge. So you have to watch all this back and forth of what are good laws and what are bad laws. It's hard. Now, we talked about what are some solutions. There are some defined solutions that groups have developed over time, including the government, and I'm trying to get back to those.
The government has come up with solutions.
Well, okay, yes, they have.
Okay, but but next, okay, so write them out. That's great. I
Okay,
can
here
do
we
that
go.
too.
4 interventions being tested. What interventions can be used for the homeless? And I'll read these. The community-based rapid rehousing, project-based transitional housing, subsidy only, and usual care. These are the types of programs that people are identifying. Now, getting into the definitions of all this, you can explore these again. Community-based rapid rehousing, project-based transitional housing, subsidy only. We talked briefly about that a second ago, that giving subsidies for this. And usual care represent different approaches to moving families out of the homelessness. So these are some things. Dallas uses what they call a point-in-time count for homeless. That's where Vicki was getting those stats early about the 4,400 and the previous year being 4,500 and things of that nature. HUD, HUD, which is the Housing and Urban Development Organizations, that they have some developmental things that you can use, for communities to develop. These programs are things that people who study this offer communities, or offer ideas for communities to address homelessness. And so different communities can use different projects. We have a personal story here.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, we do. There was a gentleman that used to hang out outside this church we go to at downtown Dallas. And he was there for many years, and he was homeless. Other organizations worked with him, and just not just with him, but he got picked up. I don't know, wrapped up into a larger organization that was helping with the homeless. This organization was able to get him an apartment. He has a regular job now. He even has his own TV, and we won't get into the story behind how he got his own TV.
Nothing bad. It's just that he was very happy that he got his own.
Yeah,
TV.
he was very happy. There was a group of people who got together once they found out he was going to get an apartment, said he needed a TV. So
I think Mom was one of those people. Yeah.
Your mom was one of a group of a few people who all pitched in and got a small TV for him, but they couldn't even take it to his apartment. And I think this is good. I think there was some controls and some monitoring and some processes that helped to protect him and helped to protect people that wanted to help this group. And the donation to TV had to go through the organization that put him in his apartment. We did get verification he received that TV. He still occasionally comes back and hangs out in front of the church. He was panhandling in front of the church prior to getting an apartment and his little small job. We've talked to him a few times. It is a success story. I don't remember the exact name of the organization that put all this together, but I think apartment subsidies was part of the solution they were using in getting this together. It was a group that was part of this program, and a large, not quite sure the number of people were, almost simultaneously. That was all put together in one, I guess their program to address this problem. And this person was very blessed, and he got an apartment, and he's got a job in.
He's like a not a cook, but
he's
like maintenance or something like that.
I think he's stocking. He does some stocking at a large food organization. But he doesn't really cook or anything like that. But he deals with loading and stuff like that of food products, which probably means big bags of flour and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Like warehouse work or something.
Warehouse work, yeah, something to that effect. And do I know if he's happy? He appears to be occasionally. He still struggles. He does have some issues in regards to mental health.
I was going to say mental health.
He does have. He also has some health issues, but they were taking care of those too. And we used to worry about him because some days he would be very attuned and able to talk to you and things of that nature, and some days you could tell he was in outer space. So he does, at least the last time we saw him, he was doing much better.
All right, so on that positive note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of the podcast. Positive note? I don't know if that's a positive note. On that note, looking towards the horizon of greater things and striving towards being better as a person and in society. There we go, that's better. Then we're going to wrap up this podcast. We are at... we're going to make sure that the audio is better next time. Like I said, it bothers you just as much as it bothers me. And we'll be sure to talk to you later. All right, thank you so much.